dalam acara guest lecture dengan tema Indonesia Racial Foreign Policy in Global Context. Untuk mengawali acara pada pagi hari ini, marilah kita bersama-sama menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi panyuringku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita berseru, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Hadirin dipersilahkan duduk kembali. Untuk melanjutkan acara, marilah kita dengarkan sambutan dari Wakil Dekan 1 Bidang Akademik Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik ULFIANI Jakarta kepada Bapak Dr. Itik Roshidi MSI. Dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Kita semua, karena pembicaraan kita ini fasih berbahasa Indonesia, ya. Bahkan bisa bahasa Jaksel. Semua pakai bahasa Jaksel. Maka sambutan saya pakai bahasa Indonesia saja. Yang saya hormati beserta kita, NIKITA KUKLIN, Dr. KUKLIN dari MGIMO University Rusia. MGIMO University ini singkatan dalam bahasa Rusia, nggak hafal panjangannya. Tapi yang jelas ini universitinya di bawah Kementerian Luar Negeri Rusia. Jadi memang kampus yang mengeluarkan calon-calon diplomat. Jadi para diplomat Rusia, bahkan Menteri Luar Negerinya ya, yang sekarang itu alumni MGIMO University. Lalu guest lecture yang kedua, ini alumni kita, ya, saudari FITRIA ULFIANI, mungkin ada yang baru ketemu ya. Ini alumni ilmu internasional tahun 2024. Sudah selesainya 2022. Ya, artinya 3 tahun yang lalu ya, 2022 mendapatkan beasiswa ke Rusia. Mungkin nanti bisa bercerita ya. Dan sekarang sudah kembali, alhamdulillah bersama kita. Nah, saya mewakili Bu Dekan FISIP dalam acara, tentu menyambut baik ya acara seperti ini. Guest lecture ini satu kegiatan yang sangat-sangat penting. Ya, bukan hanya untuk sekedar kita kedatangan seorang tamu dari luar negeri, tapi yang lebih penting adalah bagaimana kita kemudian bisa berbagi pengetahuan, bisa meningkatkan pengetahuan pengetahuan sekaligus mungkin mendapatkan pengalaman. Sekaligus juga kita karena beliau ini meskipun bukan diplomat tetapi sekarang juga bekerja di ASEAN, pokoknya di ASEAN Center di sini, dan setiap tahun pasti ke Indonesia. Tentu banyak pengalaman yang bisa kita minta beliau untuk kemudian dipresentasikan. Jadi pada para mahasiswa ini kebetulan melaksanakan semuanya ya, kita manfaatkan acara ini sebaik-baiknya untuk mendapatkan insight-insight yang tentu menginfo ya dari NIKITA ini. Saya kira itu saja adalah atas nama dekan. Sekali lagi saya menyambut baik kegiatan seperti ini, dan tentu terima kasih kepada program studi hubungan internasional atau Pak KUKLIN-nya ya, Pak Sobi Sugara yang kemudian menggelar acara ini. Mudah-mudahan ini bukan acara yang pertama ya, kali kita bukan yang pertama ke Indonesia, mudah-mudahan ke FISIP khususnya, tapi juga untuk kedepannya ya, setiap tahun kita bisa bertemu di fakultas kita tercinta. Saya kira itu. Sekian, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada Bapak Ibu Maksudin atas sambutan. Hadirin yang berbahagia, tibalah kita pada acara inti hari ini, yaitu guest lecture dengan tema Indonesia Russia Foreign Policy in Global Context. Untuk itu, kepada Pak FITRIA serta Dr. NIKITA KUKLIN dipersilakan. Izinkan saya menyerahkan acara kepada moderator kita, FITRIA DESI ULFIANI MA, yang akan memandu sesi kuliah tamu hingga selesai. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat siang semuanya. Senang sekali bisa kembali ke rumah pertama saya di FISIP Jakarta dan juga prodi internasional. Sedikit perkenalan, tadi sudah dikenalkan. Saya sudah di ULFIANI. Dulu menempuh pendidikan sarjana 1 di program hubungan internasional tahun 2017. Kemudian melanjutkan program master di University di program studi politik ekonomi ASEAN Russia Strategic Partnership. Pada hari ini saya mengundang secara khusus dosen saya yang expert dalam Indonesia Studies dan Indonesia Foreign Policy, Dr. NIKITA KUKLIN, yang akan berbicara tentang Indonesia Russia Strategic Partnership. Kepada Dr. NIKITA kami persilakan untuk berbicara.
Oke, selamat siang semua. Nama saya Dr. NIKITA KUKLIN. Saya dari Rusia, dari Universitas Nimoy, di Universitas Kementerian Luar Negeri Rusia, dan ini pusat utama untuk persiapan diplomat Rusia yang sekarang bekerja di beberapa departemen major, what is a strategic partnership? Strategic partnership in Russian diplomacy practice, Indonesian approaches to strategic partnership, and we'll consider Russian-Indonesian way to strategic partnership as a phenomenon. And conclusions after that. Please, next slide. Discourse on strategic partnership nature. And next slide, please. And for theoretical network, let's consider first all these positions. If it's not very visible, I will read it. First, an empirically informed search for a conceptual core has dominated scholarly efforts. It means for a strategic partnership, they should be first an academic basis, how we consider and how we perceive this idea of strategic partnership. What is it from the point of science, from the point of academical research? But as we see, empirical approach dominated this study. Empirical means we have something, we analyze something as a fact, as a matter of fact, and after that it becomes a part of our academic knowledge without any approach, without any position. As empirical approach is very basic, it's on the very first level of analytics. You may have an approach, you may have different approaches to this study, and if you have different approaches, it is better, as you have different positions, different views on strategic partnership and diplomacy itself. But empirical means there is a lack of study. There is still no studies on that, and that is why we should develop this idea and these studies in, for example, your research, in my research, as we are all from international relations. And next, the mosaic of findings on this subject, descriptive and constituent dimensions. So the idea of strategic partnership was intensively, but not necessarily placed in the context of individual actor foreign policies, and function of this emerging form of international association and engagement in bilateral, regional, and global affairs. That means that this level of studies showing us that strategic partnership is mostly about bilateral relations between the two countries. The two countries is not enough sometimes for international relations process. And what does it mean? Context of individual actor foreign policy. It means that all countries understand strategic partnership by themselves, by their own perception of this idea. And it's also very important. As we are, as humans, we understand different things differently from different approaches and positions. We all have our opinion on something. Another thing is that from a constructivist point of view, maybe some of you from the elder courses know what is constructivism theory in international relations and why it is important. And as we remember, Benedict Anderson, for example, Benedict Anderson is one of the famous Indonesianists, a great expert on Indonesia, but also a great expert on political studies. And Benedict Anderson told us that he imagined the country, the idea of the country, the idea of the society by our individual perception. That's only existing in our head. But the common idea, which is unique, but also common for all of the people, shows us that we can share some of the general perspective, but not the elements and details of that perspective. If we'll ask you something, it will be different for all of us. For example, I will ask you, is Indonesia a conservative country? And you may say, yes, it is a conservative country. And I will ask your friend who will say, Indonesia is a liberal country. I'm thinking like that. Yeah, and it will be different perspective. As different people perceive things differently because of their personal experience. You may be raised in a conservative family, and you may think that all people around you are conservative. You may be raised in some of the liberal family with the experience of going abroad with Western education, and you may think that all people around you are liberal, but it's only your circle of communication, not the circle of all of the people, all of the society. And it shows us that strategic partnership is the same thing. All countries perceive foreign policy and strategic partnership as an element of foreign policy in a different way. It's very specific for each country, and it's based on the knowledge and the experience, historical experience,
existing IR mainstream and critical approaches. And this, however, still tells short of the development of standalone theoretical framework for the analysis of the strategic partnership. It means there are critical approaches to strategic partnerships. Some people say that there are no strategic partnerships. Real is just a concept. Please, next slide. Normative understanding. What does it mean? I'm always approaching relations between countries of Southeast Asia and countries of the West, or countries of Europe, or Russia, as Russia is not a European country, it's not a Western country. Russia is a Eurasian country, as half of Russia is Europe, half of Russia is in Asia. And that is why we're talking about normative understanding of strategic partnership. That means what is understanding of strategic partnership in different countries with different political cultures. And political culture says a lot about this strategic partnership idea. And first of all, we consider that the countries with the same normative ideas cooperate more willingly within themselves. They cooperate on the basis of, how to say, the same normative framework. And if they have the same normative framework, it is better to them to act on the international arena. And it differs in different cases, in different ideas. You may see, for example, the Philippines. The Philippines is a neighboring country to you. There was a president, Rodrigo Duterte. And Rodrigo Duterte was a president of conservative views, and he supported the idea of, drug war. He was warring against the bandits who were producing narcotics, and it was to some extent effective policy, to some extent ineffective. It was politicized, and Rodrigo Duterte decided to support China and Russia as countries of his interest, as countries which are good for foreign policy of Philippines by his opinion as president. And Philippines were supporting many of the initiatives by China and by Russia in the region. And many people were going like, Rodrigo Duterte is one of the friends of Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, something like that. But now you see there is another president in the Philippines, President Marcos Jr., who is a great friend of the United States. And now we see that Philippines is a totally pro-American country. Yeah, in many of the ways, foreign policy of the Philippines, showing that there are contradictions between China and the Philippines. Now we see it from the media, from the newspapers, and also we have this problem of American military exercises in the Philippines, and the support from the Philippines to American military forces in the region. There's the same country, the Philippines of Rodrigo Duterte, and the Philippines of President Marcos is the same country as the Philippines. It's existed as one country for many of the years. It's your neighbor, but because of the president views are different, and the foreign policy changes itself. And that's the idea of the normative approach, that different presidents, different administrations also perceive it differently. And good understanding can be observed that some of their countries are objectively forced to cooperate. They are objectively forced to cooperate because of the international relations situation. And international relations situation means that in the world existing a kind of international situation, and there are some problems threatening your national interest. And your national interest as your future diplomat, your people who are studying foreign policy, is the main thing. National interest is how to protect the interest of your society abroad in the foreign policy arena. And that's the main idea of the strategic partnership, is to find good partners, to find partners for your foreign policy implementation. And let's consider the next slide. Yeah, types of strategic partnership. When you already found a country you want to establish a strategic partnership with and cooperate with, there are some types. The first type is symbolic. Symbolic means that the status of such a partnership does not imply specific actions that go beyond the current relationship. It is declaration only that countries say it's just we are strategic partners, but we are doing nothing. We are not developing economy, not developing politics or something. And that means symbolic. Another thing is economic strategic partnership. That means countries are interested in a partnership based on economic diplomacy. It is financial system, trade, and many other areas like permissible between equal partners, but it doesn't affect the political side of this. Strategic partnership in economic sphere is very popular among the countries of Global South. As the countries of Global South are different in their foreign policy, their political regime, and their political system, and as they are different, there are some countries who approach them with the idea that they can change their policies, like Americans. America is one of the best examples of this foreign policy type, when they are just telling the country to change its foreign policy. For example, we are giving you money and you change your foreign policy. One of the countries, for example, supporting Palestine, Americans come and saying, we'll give you money, but you're stopping to support Palestine. You're just staying neutral. You're not criticizing Israel or something. And they say, okay, we're taking money, but we're not criticizing. It's an economic diplomacy which is touching the politics, the political aspect. That's why country is like bribed by the investment, by something. Yeah? And in some of the small countries, there is a problem of economic stability, and that is why by this investment they wouldn't criticize or something because of the need to protect national interest, to protect economic stability. Next thing is a political strategic partnership, and it's one of the most impressive strategic partnership types. Political means countries are feeling that they are very close in a political sense, and they are deepening political dialogue with more serious obligations in terms of international support for each other. For example, Indonesia and Malaysia, two countries of ASEAN and two neighbors, they're producing the palm oil. And the palm oil is strongly criticized by the European Union. They say like palm oil is dangerous, it is very important to produce it ecologically, it harms forests in Kalimantan or something. There's a lot of critique, but for Malaysia and Indonesia, it's one of the main sources of income. And that allows you to have budget while you're selling the palm oil. And Indonesia and Malaysia are agreeing to protect both the positions of the palm oil on the European market. That's a political decision, that's an economic decision, that's based on pragmatism, and two countries starting to protect this palm oil by this political obligation. They are not strategic partners, but they are actual strategic partners as they are neighbors and they're existing in the ASEAN framework. But for example, Indonesia signed 2 agreements of strategic partnership with Thailand and Vietnam, considering these countries to be strategic partnerships of partners of Indonesia. Next is another important thing, is security. Security is another type of strategic partnership and development of defense cooperation in the military sphere. And interaction to create a security architecture and coordination in the field of its protection. That means if we want to protect the region, we establish a strategic partnership and we are helping each other with the security issues. For example, North Korea and Russia have a strategic cooperation agreement in the sphere of security. And North Korean people even helping Russia in some of the situations with the security threats. And of course, Russia will help in case of the threat to the security to North Korea. It's one of the examples. Or we have, for example, South Korea and America. They also are strategic partners in the security. We can regulate the microphone because it's very loud. Yeah, my voice is like I'm talking from, I don't know, from the tank.
Yes, you can hear me all right. I will put it like that, so the sound won't be too strong. And next thing is comprehensive. Comprehensive or overwhelming partnership means that partners cooperate in all that areas, of economic, political, and security cooperation, and they strive to jointly implement interests in several areas. We have, for example, comprehensive strategic partnership with China and Russia, and these two countries cooperate as strategic partners, comprehensive strategic partners. And next slide, please. Strategic partnership in Russian diplomacy. Please, next. First of all, for the Russian concept of the foreign policy. Russian concept of the foreign policy is fully realist. We are realists and we consider the world to some extent in terms of global balance of power. And we also consider it from the point of view of the security cooperation and balance of threats. You know the main conflict, one of the main conflicts for today is the conflict between NATO with the United States and Russia. And there is a proxy conflict. As a result of this proxy conflict is the Ukrainian conflict, unfortunately. For now, we have, for example, interesting, I would say good relations with the United States, as the United States are unpredictable in these days with this administration of Donald Trump, but Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, they have good relations now. But we have problem, for example, with the European Union. But it means that there are still some threats to Russian national security, and that is why Russia is pragmatically following the idea of protection of its security and national interest. And for strategic partners of Russia, it is very important that we are not aggressive against each other. It means we wouldn't attack each other, we wouldn't never apply military force, or we will solve all contradictions in a diplomatic way. It's very common to ASEAN countries, they do not attack each other, except Thailand and Cambodia. Unfortunately, this year, there are some conflicts, of course, and we couldn't avoid it as international relations are complicated, and politics is very complicated. But in ASEAN, the main principle is to solve contradictions diplomatically. And as you see now, Cambodia and Thailand are solving their problems diplomatically, not by the military means. But for Russia, it's the main point, non-aggression. The country should be friendly to establish cooperation with Russia. Next point is refusal to conclude a military alliance with any country directed against a third party. It means that the strategic partners of Russia do not have alliances with other partners who are against Russian interests. It means, for example, if China cooperates with NATO, we couldn't be strategic partners. We cannot establish this strategic partnership as one party is an ally to another party. But that's a different thing, because China would never join NATO or cooperate with NATO in terms of security. It's nonsense as NATO existing against China and Russian interests. It's the main purpose of that. There was a joke at the Soviet time. It wasn't a joke, but Joseph Stalin, our famous Soviet leader, he wanted to join NATO. And he told them, if it's not a problem, if your NATO is not against the Soviet Union, you are saying it's just for your protection, Soviet Union can join the alliance, and your protection will be maximized. With participation of America and Soviet Union, everything will be saved, as we are nuclear powers. But NATO refused the Soviet Union application. That means that there is a hidden sense within it. You have to show that the NATO nature is existing against, to constrain Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, and now China, as one of the main not anti-Western. China is not anti-Western. China is simply global South economy, one of the most prominent global South economy, different from the Western world.
And next, non-interference in each other's internal affairs. It means that our strategic partner, for example, China or Russia as a strategic partner of China, cannot criticize each other in terms of internal policy. For example, we have something in China, their political decision, and we cannot say as diplomatic partners, oh, you know, guys, we do not like your domestic policy. Please return free internet, allow access to Google or something. It's an American thing. Yeah, they criticize China for that. China criticizes America for other things, and that means there is a contradiction between them. And Russia and China, they do not have contradictions in this area. They do not have a right to do this diplomatically as their strategic partners. That's one of the main conditions. And of course, mutual trust. You cannot be a strategic partner with a country you cannot trust, especially administration, elites, their president, their leader. If you do not trust the country, it's a problem. Yeah, but the trust between the countries is more difficult than the trust between people. For the people, it's just individual case. We can discuss, we can agree, we can have mutual consensus for something. But for the governments, it's very pragmatic as they follow national interest, and they could not agree on some of the actions. There are some of their interesting issues in the world that we cannot just surpass by negotiation and consensus. One of the examples, you know, Serbia. Serbia is one of the good allies. It's a country in Eastern Europe. Sometimes people say that it's a Balkan country. And Serbian people are also Orthodox people as Russians. They're our brothers by faith. Yeah, but another thing, in Serbia, they have a problem of Kosovo. Kosovo was established with the support of NATO, the support of the European Union, and there are people of Albanian origin, who are some of them Muslims, some of them are not, but they are actually have a contradictions with Serbian people. And Kosovo now existing as an independent state, it's recognized by European Union, by some of the Western countries, and it's a problem within Serbia. Serbia considers Kosovo as a part of their territory, and Kosovo people say we are independent. That's a sovereignty issue. There's an issue of separatism, maybe from the Serbian point of view, and from the Kosovo, it's issue of independence. But in case, for example, of Russia, we have this issue of Crimea. Crimea is a Russian territory that after the collapse of the Soviet Union became a part of the Ukraine, you know. And in 2014, by the referendum, people in Crimea voted to join Russia. And they became a territory of Russia as there are all Russian people living there. It's like, I don't know, maybe some of the, we wouldn't say that because it's a bad thing to say, but imagine in Malaysia there will be some many Indonesian people in some of the territory and they say, we want to join Indonesia or something. But for ASEAN it's already passed because it was a confrontation. Yeah, you remember during Sukarno times there was the same thing. And in the Crimea case, they voted at the referendum and they joined Russia, but Western countries do not recognize this situation. And that is where we have a contradiction in national interest. Serbia is a good partner of Russia. They are our very good friends. They are supporting many of the initiatives by Russia. But they cannot recognize the fact of the Crimea, as if they recognize Crimea as a Russian territory, they automatically recognize Kosovo right to be independent. And it's not in their interest. Yeah, you see, that's a contradiction, and that's how international politics works. There is nothing personal in it. There are also pragmatic field of national interest, and if you're stepping down, if you're giving off your position in national interest, you can lose the stability in your country. It's threatening your national interest, it's threatening your national security. And it's very important. That is why you have the third principle of Pancasila, the unity of Indonesia. That Indonesia is a negara kesatuan Republik Indonesia. They united, territory, only one. And it's considered by the whole territory of Indonesia. And Indonesia do not discuss territorial, some of the territorial things like we want your territory, we want this island, we want your aquatory, and for Indonesia it's a matter of national stability and national interest. The same is for Russia, is Crimea, new territories, and the same is for Kosovo in Serbia. Yeah? That's about mutual trust. We should trust each other, and we should analyze all international cases, how they work in this. Let's discuss next slide. And for Russia, there is a concept of a comprehensive strategic partnership. And a comprehensive strategic partnership is a higher level of development of relations between countries. And comprehensive strategic partnership means that the countries are already strategic partners, but they want to develop high political trust, mutual support to each other, comprehensive and broad cooperation in all areas, and in all parties that have interests such as politics, culture, society, and this partnership is focused on specific long-term cooperation. It's a long-term cooperation, and that's very important in this case. That's the Russian concept of strategic partnership. As you see, it's very realistic. It's not talking about your political views, your political system. Like in case of the European Union, they will say our strategic partner should be democratic, should be liberal, should respect human rights, should respect climate change struggle or something, green technology, many conditions to be a strategic partner of the European Union. For Russia, just be a normal country. Will be your strategic partner. It's very realistic as we have principles of United Nations, principles of sovereignty. Countries do not interfere in each other's affairs. Countries recognize each other as mutual partners. And that's the same for ASEAN. ASEAN is existing on the same basis. And next slide, please. Indonesian approaches to strategic partnership. Let's analyze how Indonesia understands this concept. Please, next slide. And let's discuss Indonesian foreign policy framework. For Indonesian foreign policy framework comes from 5 principles of Pancasila. You know it better than me as you were studying Pancasila from school times. Yeah, and you all know the principles of Pancasila as you were good Indonesian citizens, I believe. These principles are also very important for foreign policy information. Pancasila consists of many of the initial philosophical traditions of Indonesia. You know it is based on many of the ideas of the independence period, and of course based on the traditional philosophy of Indonesian people, but because of the origin of Bung Karno, this political tradition is mostly Javanese. I'm saying this directly. I know that it's sometimes a discussable question here, but I would say that political tradition in Indonesia mostly Javanese, because the majority of the leaders, the majority of the political elite are of Javanese origin. And Javanese political tradition comes from ancient states of Mataram, first kingdom of Mataram, then Mataram Sultanate, then Majapahit, famous Majapahit, which was a country, big empire of all the territory of Indonesia, but of Javanese origin. And it comes from many of their traditional philosophical ideas, and even to some extent it's rooted in some philosophical thoughts like Javan. It's also very mystical, also very complicated system of knowledge, but it's also good for national knowledge of foreign policy. And one of the creators of Indonesian foreign policy, Bung Hatta, Muhammad Hatta, first vice president of Indonesia, one of the greatest patriotic leaders, with his elder friend Sukarno. And as we see, independent and active foreign policy, politik luar negeri bebas aktif, is a core principle of Indonesian foreign policy. And we consider Indonesia as a tolerant state with a religious balance, which is important in today's world. We consider Indonesia as a democracy. As in Indonesia, there is a specific democracy of Indonesian type. It's not a Western democracy. Indonesia is not a country of Western American democracy. And you cannot build American or European democracy in Indonesia, because Indonesia is different from Europe, from America. You have different historical experience. And that is why you have Sukarno's form of Indonesian democracy. And now many of their parties, as we already discussed with your elder colleagues, we discussed that many of the democratic parties today, they follow this idea of Indonesian nationalism and Indonesian democracy in terms of their concept by Bung Karno, how he was seeing it through Marxism, through Islamic socialism, through the ideas of Nasako for the first part of the Indonesian independence, and many other acronym and ideologies invented at that period. The most important thing is the unity of Indonesia. I already told you that's one of the main principles, unity of Indonesia. The first principle of Pancasila, belief in one and only God, is important for domestic policy, is important for the balance between people. People of different religions can exist together in a tolerant society. That's very important for Indonesian stability. If it breaks up, Indonesia is destroyed as a country. If the first principle will be violated, as people should respect each other and should follow this religious balance. But for international politics, third principle, unity of Indonesia, is very important, as Indonesia is not a country who is trading its sovereignty. You know, by the constitution, it is forbidden to place military bases in Indonesia. For example, if America or Russia or China want to place their military base in Indonesia, it is forbidden. It's not possible because of the national constitution. Indonesia is not joining alliances like NATO, like AUKUS, military alliances, not joining because it's very important to stay neutral, to stay assertive, to be free and active. To be free, it means you are not depending on other countries, on their decisions. And it's very important in today's world, as you see, so many countries, even France, even Great Britain, they are following their path of the diplomacy by the United States, or to some extent they're forming Western concept of this diplomacy. And you are lucky that you have this free and active foreign policy. You are better in this term than France, than Great Britain or Australia, as they have the foreign policy limitation. They couldn't have a free foreign policy. And you can choose, you can be friends with the European Union, no problem. You can be friends with Russia, no problem. Yeah, it's a very good thing for the country to have this balance. Even in Russia, we are limited. We cannot be friends with the West as we have contradictions, historical contradictions. We can cooperate strategically sometimes, as it was before the situation of today. But we should develop this idea that sovereign country is really sovereign in all aspects. And Indonesia is one of the examples of it. And all other principles, you know, it is democracy, social justice. That is why Indonesia is protecting Palestine, because of the social justice principle. It's very important for Indonesian people to have social justice. And democracy. Democracy is also very important, and Indonesia is defending democracy in the foreign policy arena, showing that it's a democratic country. But democratic with its own perspective, with its own unique vision. It's also very important to understand the strategic positioning of Indonesia. Next slide, please. An Indonesian dilemma of double identity. It's interesting because in Indonesia we have the unique case when sometimes a country is very pragmatic in its actions, but sometimes very ideological. And you know, countries are even pragmatic or even ideological. Ideological means you're imagining something as a national ideology, and you have, for example, some kind of ideology, and you say, we must build it, we must do that, and we're going somewhere. And your foreign policy is based on ideology. And it means you're having a kind of special vision of the world. Like in the United States, they have the idea of democracies. And they want to have democracies everywhere. And that is why America is fighting authoritarian governments. They think that democracy is a unique concept. They will attack a country, for example, Iraq. They go to Iraq, they overthrow Saddam Hussein, everything's fine, Iraq is a democratic country, they build skyscrapers, they become rich, they live a high quality life. No. Unfortunately, in today's Iraq, there is still a chaos. Yeah? Or they go to Afghanistan, and they say Afghanistan will be democratic, we'll just make order here. What happened to Afghanistan? They will all see the consequences of that. And that's why ideological policy can be dangerous. In Gen Z, we have this term, the Lulu. Yeah, that can be also applied to governments. Governments can be the Lulu in their actions, as they think we can do this, but actually they can't, as they do not have resources, they don't have possibilities. Indonesia is one of the examples of the balance between ideological motion and motion of the pragmatism. And sometimes we have these restrictions and these ideas what Indonesia want to play on the international arena. Indonesia is a global actor. Of course, Indonesia wants to become a global actor. As Martin Natalegawa, previous foreign minister before Narasumber, he told that Indonesia is a regional power with global interest. Indonesia is really a country of global interest, as many of the things influencing Indonesia from the world arena. Even, for example, conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Conflict with Russia and Ukraine, we are two major producers of agricultural products. If two countries worry, no trade, no trade routes, which are open as a military threat everywhere, and agricultural products, food, simply do not reach Indonesia. And people are studying here as either agriculture is not enough for Indonesia to sustain a society. Yeah, that is why it is importing many of the food products, even from Russia and Ukraine. Yeah? And I'm talking about wheat, I'm talking about rice, and many other things. And in this case, we see that even global events can influence Indonesia. If you think you're far enough from Europe, from Russia, and you're safe, no, conflict can hurt you. Americas, very long from you, yeah, very far, I mean. But they also want to be actors in South China Sea. They also want to establish communication with Australia, they build AUKUS, they want to have military bases everywhere to constrain China. China wants this idea of the South China Sea, 9-dash line and other things, which is proposed by the Chinese government. And there are also contradictions in South China Sea between ASEAN, between America, between China, and many other states involved. That means if you want to play a global role, you should have resources for that. And sometimes in Indonesia, if there are resources, Indonesia is playing global role, very good. If there are no resources, Indonesia is playing closed system, like isolation. It seems like, that's why many people call Indonesia as the United States of Southeast Asia. As in Southeast Asia, they are like the biggest country, Indonesia, with its great military, political, and economic potential, but in some cases, Indonesia is just isolating itself from national affairs because of their inner situation. Another thing is internal economic stability. Economic stability is the main factor of stability of Indonesia. Infrastructure, economics, if it's bad, Indonesia is in danger. Other things is threat of inter-ethnic, interfaith, and social conflict. Indonesia is very vulnerable to social, religious, and inter-ethnic conflicts. And some of the external actors, and there are external actors who are not interested in Indonesia as a good country, as a global country, they may play, they may manipulate these contradictions, and they may interfere. And that is very important for you as an international relations student to see this thing behind. If you're thinking emotionally about something, just consider 3 times whether you are influenced by something, by the idea, by the social media. You're seeing in social media something, it's provoking your emotion. You say, it is bad, I need to go and just solve this problem. That's a manipulation. We can manipulate each each other. Here we are people, we have a trust. Trust helps us to build society, but also trust can be used by external forces to destabilize the system. There can be problems in all of the countries. In all of the countries in the world, there are problems, as we are living in a society of the people, and people are not ideal. If there will be ideal people, as described in holy books, as described in philosophical books, it would be, I don't know, the society of the future. We already go to space to colonize Mars, to colonize galactics, yeah, but for now we are living on this planet with problems. Yeah, we cannot even arrange our own planet. And that is why people are not ideal. And we live in a society with not ideal people. We have historical experiences, different historical experiences, and social problems can be very threatening. And especially for Indonesian society, as it's very collective, you know. When people are individual, like in America, they live their own lives, they are not dependent, but in Indonesia, all people are together. You are the same collective, you are very connected to each other, to your families, to organizations. If you want to build a career, you join in, for example, a political party, or you join in organization at AULA or MADYA, you can join, you'll have a good career. You'll have a party, political party, you have this patron-client system here, and if you want, you should have one of the elders who will teach you, your mentor, and after that you can build a career. It's an indicator of the collective society. And collective societies are very viral. I'm saying one thing, for example, I'm saying something here, and after that you already go into your phone, you're posting this, and all Indonesia knows about me, that I said something, and you're angry or you're happy with me or something. Yeah? That's how viral societies work, and that's what I'm saying. If there is a threat of inter-ethnic, interfaith, and social conflict, that's against the principle which is Indonesia is built on. Sukarno tried to avoid this thing. He invented Pancasila to have an instrument against all these problems. And if you see that someone's telling you, you know, you're a Javanese and this is Sudanese, they killed your princess 300 years ago and you should hate them because of that, it's not a good way. Or some people say, you know, they're Christians, they're doing something wrong. Or they're Muslim, they're against you, that's a provocation. As people are people, we are the same, we have the same moral values, we have the same basis, our religions are even the same, you know, the Christians, Muslims are same Abrahamic family, and even Hindu people, Buddhist people, the principles are the same. And inter-ethnic, you know, there's a thing that for us, Russians, people that are from Kazakhstan, from Uzbekistan, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, when you're going abroad, you're Russian. The same is for Indonesia. You know about ethnic groups in Indonesia. You know for Batak, Sunda, Minangkabau. People abroad do not know. They say Indonesian. Right. Well, one Indonesian people, they don't know who you are in terms of your ethnic group. And it's interesting when we have this global system and people still arguing who is better, who is more smart, like Chinese, Indonesian, or Batak, who is better lawyer. In this case, or who is better music player, who is singing better, Malayu people, or Minangkabau people, or something. Sudanese people have a great music. Yeah, it's, in all countries we have that. In Russia is the same. There are many ethnic groups, and we're still arguing about something. But social contradictions is one of the threats to Indonesian stability as a global country, as a regional power. Next thing, high role of nationalism and state symbols in people's life. And for another term, global maritime access, Wawasan Nusantara. When it's about nationalism, it's to some extent, nationalism is about isolation to some extent. You should have nationalism to be protected from other influences. But in another way, nationalism sometimes giving a framework for negative emotions. But people starting to say our nation is better than other nations. And we do not need other nations to grow. We do not need other countries, do not need cooperation. And sometimes nationalism can be negative for foreign policy. In some cases you have to cooperate. For example, you know that the United States are supporting Israel. You do not like this, but you have to cooperate with the United States because they are one of the main partners of Indonesia. You are trading, you have economy, and you won't have products in your shops in Indomaret, in Alfamart. There would be products if you're arguing with the United States or China, as they are your trading partners. And it's a part of the global politics as well. Another thing is Indonesia is a leader of the Ummah, is one of the great criteria. It's arguable, as you know, Saudi Arabia is claiming to be the center of the Muslim world, but actually the most populous Muslim country in the world is Indonesia. The thing is that Islam teachings may be different in different countries, but the main power of Indonesia is Islam Nusantara. The idea of the tolerant Islam, the idea of the Islam as a global force which can unite people, which can protect social solidarity, social justice, in terms of Ummah, which is close to some of the maybe socialist idea, to some of maybe democratic idea of social justice, but which comes from a religious background. And it's also very important. You know, this unique situation of Islamization in Indonesia with this great element of adab in it. It is also one of their global opportunities for Indonesia to develop its national heritage and to show the world what are the Indonesian teachings in Islam. And to some extent, you know, it's a great weapon on fighting extremism and terrorism. Extremists and terrorists are not, maybe they are religious people, they may be religious people, but they are using religions in terms to achieve their political values, their political goals. You do not need this, as when it comes to politics, there is no religion, religion becomes instrument. It's not a faith anymore, it's a political instrument to manipulate people. And that is why to fight extremism in the society, to fight terrorism, or teachings which are radical, you should have some of the balanced teaching. And Indonesian example of Islam toleration and Islam development is one of the best examples in the world, to my view. I know many of the teachings from the Middle East, and I met people from Turkey, people from Middle Eastern countries like Syria, Iraq, people from Iran, from Shia Muslim, from Afghanistan as well. And I think many of the problems in the Middle East are coming from their disability to find a common ground. And you have already found a common ground, and Indonesia is a big achievement. Like there was an idea, if you remember, by Nurkolis Majid, to unite all the teachings in Indonesia to abstain from contradictions and to find a common ground. And it's a wonderful idea that, of course, there will be contradictions. People may understand senses of holy books differently. And people can also have different perspective, as I already told you. But the common ground is the first step for diplomacy. And next thing, let's discuss it quick. Indonesia is ASEAN leader. It means Indonesia global ASEAN promoter. It defends Indonesian and ASEAN principles in the world arena. Next, Indonesia is a global mass culture. It's very good that Indonesian culture can be global. The same as Korean, Japanese, the same as countries of Asia, which are now popular among the world, as Indonesia can also offer something new for the world by its unique culture. Another thing is Indonesia has a closed system that popular, folk, and elite culture in Indonesia may be to some extent complicated to understand for the people from abroad, especially for Europeans. For the people who are not from the collective cultures, Russia is a collective country, that is why I can understand Indonesian people. For Europeans, it is more complicated to understand this idea, how the culture works in the country. And to some extent, Indonesian people following unique cultural patterns, and you cannot explain it to people from abroad. That means there are some borders, some limitations to spread your culture abroad. Yeah, when you're trying to show Indonesian culture abroad, you have to simplify it. And sometimes it may be negative. For example, during Suharto times, Bali was simplified in cultural terms, and now every Western people go to Bali and they have this very simplified perception of the Bali. Bali is a unique culture, is a unique form of Hinduism. There are many temples, Chandi. These people are descendants of Mataram and Majapahit. They are true nature of Hindu-Buddhist culture in Indonesia. But Western comes and say, oh, I will use a ritual, I will meditate, and they violate local culture in Bali. And that's one of the consequences of globalization. If you want to say, okay, my culture will be popular, you should be prepared that people may come and people won't be educated to understand your culture properly. And they just violate some of the traditions and they will make bad things. And that's what for now is becoming in Bali, but I think it will be solved on the basis of consensus and all these things. Next slide, please. To be short, the strategic partnership culture in Indonesia comes from these three Reformation presidents, two presidents, and one of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Megawati Soekarno-Putri, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and Hasan Derayakuda, who were architects of the idea of strategic partnership, that Indonesia should have strategic partnerships with other countries. And please, next slide. Yeah, Indonesian use of strategic partnership. To be short, strategic partnership is a platform used by Indonesian policymakers to involve major powers into regional norms and institutions. It's important. That's how you make other countries play by your rules. Next, strategic partnership is a platform for facilitating Indonesia's vision of regional order, on how to explain your vision of regional order to others. Instrument to protect Indonesia's vision of inclusive world order from other countries who are not interested in it. And a tool for improving economic relations and developing Indonesia as a technological state. It's very pragmatic reason, but it works. For example, Indonesia joining BRICS to establish economic and technological ties with countries who are very well developed. ASEAN Dialogue Partnership, of course, strategic partnership as a part of the Dialogue Partnership in ASEAN, and direct development of social and value contacts between nations. And that's how Indonesia views its strategic partnership norms. And next slide, please. Indonesia-Russia way to strategic partnership. Next slide. In short, you can see, you can just photo that, and we already discussed many of the things here, that what are boosters and obstacles for Russia and Indonesia in their strategic partnership. We have great history, we have same beliefs, so we have same views on many things in international politics. We strive to ensure and protect national sovereignty. We have availability of regional cooperation mechanism. Russia supports ASEAN centrality and Indonesian interests. But we also have the problem of Ukrainian crisis. We have a great powers contradiction, insufficient volume of trade. Unfortunately, we do not trade pretty good. Our trade volume is very low. Lack of information. Unfortunately, Russian and Indonesian people know nothing about each other, and we should educate each other on our cultures, on our nations, and to know better and more information about each other. And attempts by unfriendly actors to influence relations. Our relations can also be influenced by some of the countries who are not interested in good relations between Indonesia and Russia. And next slide, please. And that's it. Terima kasih banyak atas perhatiannya.
Terima kasih banyak Dr. Nikita KUKLIN atas penjelasannya tadi. Tadi ketika teman-teman memperhatikan semuanya, kita sudah menjelaskan bahwa ternyata Indonesia dan Rusia memiliki kesamaan, banyak kesamaan. Dan ini menjadi peluang untuk kerjasama atau strategic partnership between Indonesia dan Rusia. Sebenarnya kalau mau ditelaah lagi dari sejarahnya juga panjang. Bagaimana kemudian Rusia itu pernah membantu Indonesia. Bahkan kalau teman-teman tahu, bantuan Uni Soviet seperti Gelora Bung Karno itu atas bantuan Uni Soviet, dan juga rumah sakit persahabatan itu juga bantuan Uni Soviet. Bahkan di Moskow sekalipun Stadion Luzhniki namanya itu sama persis dengan Gelora Bung Karno gitu.
Jadi kira-kira banyak peluang yang bisa kerjasamakan, termasuk dalam hal pendidikan juga gitu. Dan seperti yang tadi kita bilang bahwa ada international perception yang dibentuk bahwa mungkin hubungan Indonesia-Rusia itu agak sedikit memburuk pada masa-masa sejarahnya, karena ada international perception yang dibentuk bahwa Rusia misalkan Rusia adalah negara yang masih komunis dan lain sebagainya, padahal sudah sangat berbeda pada hari ini. Dan mungkin orang mengira bahwa Rusia terlalu jauh, makanya kita tidak membentuk suatu kerjasama politik atau hubungan internasional. Kemudian setelah ini kita mau bahas sebenarnya mempromosikan terkait master program. Jadi teman-teman, seperti perkenalan yang sebelumnya tadi, saya menempuh pendidikan S2 di program Political Economy. Ini yang pertama kita. Program namanya Program Political Economy of Russia ASEAN Strategic Partnership. Jadi saya menempuh program ini di MGMO University. Seperti yang tadi kita sudah sampaikan bahwa universitas ini adalah it's like a kitchen for diplomat of Russia gitu. Jadi semua diplomat Russia mereka lulus dari MGMO, termasuk Duta Besar Rusia untuk Indonesia dan juga Menteri Luar Negeri Rusia pada saat ini. Program ini saya termasuk adalah angkatan pertama, the first batch of this program, because this program is the result of the collaboration between ASEAN Secretariat and Russia. In this case is MGMO University, because Russia is one of the country partner of ASEAN. Iya, salah satu partner negara dari ASEAN. Jadi kalau di ASEAN itu ada beberapa negara di luar ASEAN yang menjadi partner dari ASEAN itu sendiri, seperti Rusia salah satunya. Dan ini adalah program kerjasama yang dibentuk untuk meningkatkan hubungan kerjasama dalam bidang pendidikan. Jadi dinamai Political Economy of ASEAN Russia Strategic Partnership. Itu. Jadi tadi sudah perkenalan, dalam bahasa Rusia hello berarti здравствуйте. Kita kasih bagus. Oke, здравствуйте, hello. Saya dulu lulusan S1 di sini 2017 dan kemudian melanjutkan dengan gelarnya MA in Economics. Selanjutnya, ini jika ada yang bertanya bahwa apa itu MGMO adalah sebuah singkatan dalam bahasa Rusia. Mungkin kita bisa pronounce Moscow Secretariat.
The Moscow State University of International Relations, but it was instituted, that's why it's Moscow Institute of International Relations, Московский государственный институт международных отношений, МГИМО, акроним.
Ya gitu. Jadi sebenarnya sampai sempat sering lelah untuk menjelaskan like what is your program and where you study, because our name is very long. Like our program is Political Economy of ASEAN Russia Strategic Partnership, and our university is Moscow State Institute of International Relations. And sometimes we put like because we are under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia Federation, so we call it like MGMO University under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of the Russian Federation MGMO. So it's like quite long to tell you like where your study is. So next slide. This is the flyer of this program, the Political Economy of the ASEAN Russia Strategic Partnership. This program not taught fully in English, jadi programnya adalah 2 tahun. Jadi karena program itu dalam bahasa Inggris, so we don't have like the preparation language class before, because biasanya untuk universitas lain, they have like preparation study 1 year Russian language, and then after that they study for 2 years. But because our program is in English, so we don't have the preparation language, but we have the Russian class in our curriculum, because we are diplomatic academy, so we are supposed to have like the third language, I could say that, like because we are Indonesian or we are ASEAN students and our program is an English program, so our third language is Russian. So we have like 3 times per week for Russian class, so we can understand the basic Russian. So don't worry. So yeah, how about the combination between ASEAN students? This program is consists from the ASEAN students from ASEAN countries and the Russian itself, and also like the student from another countries. Like I have like one friend from Kyrgyzstan. So jadi di setiap negara ASEAN we have like one quota for scholarship, I guess. Yeah, one quota for scholarship for each ASEAN countries. Like we have 10 countries in ASEAN: Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, Philippines, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. Yeah, we have 10. Tapi dalam angkatan pertama saya, we only have like Indonesia, Malaysia, Laos, Vietnam, and one Singaporean. But one Singaporean. We don't have like Philippines, Brunei, Cambodia. We don't have. And what else? Yeah, that's all. Yeah, but the second batch we have Cambodian, and then also of course Russian students and other countries like Africa maybe. Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have Nigerian in our second year's program. So the applicants biasanya akan dibuka pada bulan Maret. Ya, untuk tahun ini sudah tutup. Kemarin application deadline tanggal 31 Juli 2025 dan akan dibuka lagi tahun depan sekitar bulan Maret. Dan itu nanti seleksinya ada 2 tahap. Pertama untuk interview dan portofolio, jadi nanti kirim dokumen dan kemudian nanti akan diinterview. Kemungkinan kita akan jadi salah satu interviewer untuk interview nanti masuk dalam program politik ekonomi ASEAN. Boleh next slide? Nah, ini salah satu bukan salah satu, banyak kegiatan yang dilakukan selama di sana. Salah satunya yang pertama, foto yang sebelah kiri atas itu ada acara ASEAN Day di MGUMO sendiri, karena karena di MGUMO sendiri ada sekitar 51 bahasa yang dipelajari. Jadi nanti di MGUMO walaupun kita sudah punya kelas bahasa Rusia, you can choose another language in the second language, but there's paper for that. Tapi Russian sudah cukup, I guess. Jadi ada acara ASEAN Day setiap tahunnya, dan juga yang kedua ASEAN Center memfasilitasi kita untuk bertemu dengan Russian ASEAN Business Council. Itu salah satu konsil yang berfokus pada peningkatan kerjasama perdagangan antara Rusia dan Indonesia, dan kita di-provide untuk bertemu dengan orang-orang itu dan membahas banyak hal, terutama dalam hal ekonomi dan politik. Dan yang ketiga itu pertemuan dengan berbagai dengan the Secretary General of AULA. Yeah, AULA is one of the organizations about the maritime area. Dan kebetulan Sekretaris Jenderal itu adalah orang Indonesia. Iya, Salman Al-Farisi, Bapak Salman Al-Farisi, salah satu diplomat Indonesia, dan kita ada round table di sana. So we act like a diplomat because MGUMO really provide us to be like the real diplomat, and you can find like the real diplomat there and how to behave, how to dress, like we learn everything in MGUMO. So the next slide. Yep. Yang tadi saya sampaikan bahwa di MGUMO ada banyak acara yang dapat diikuti. Acara ASEAN, acara Indonesia Day yang akan coming soon tanggal 25. Dan jadi kita nanti setelah dari Indonesia akan organize the Indonesian Day. So akan kerjasama dengan Kedutaan Besar Republik Indonesia di Moskow. Acaranya mungkin nanti akan lebih meriah, dan juga ada beberapa hari perayaan untuk negara lainnya seperti Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, dan lain sebagainya. Next slide. So ini mungkin pertanyaan like life in Russia. So different with other countries, Russia is very cold. Untuk di Moskow sendiri, my experience is like -30. like, so we have a winter like during the half of year, I guess. Half of year, so like we spend our day with winter. But it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Ya, it's okay. Like kita ada 4 musim, musim panas, musim gugur, musim dingin, dan musim semi. But we spend the half of years with the winter. So yeah, it's a nice experience, and especially for us, the Muslim society. Russia, I could say that Russia is very friendly country for Muslim because there's a lot of mosques in Russia. Like the second picture is the biggest mosque in Moscow. So ini ada orang sholat itu bukan AI tapi itu real. Itu real selama bulan Ramadan dan Idul Adha dan Idul Fitri kita merayakan, dan semua orang sholat, hampir ada sekitar 10.000 lebih orang yang akan datang ke masjid untuk melakukan sholat jamaah di sana gitu. Dan juga kedua ada masjid kedua itu ada di Kazan. Ya, namanya adalah masjid. Ya, jadi ada kota Federasi Kazan, Tatarstan adalah Republik Islam di Rusia, dan sejarah Muslim di sana sangat menarik sekali karena dulu ada pengaruh Turki di sana, dan kemudian kerajaan di sana, iya, Kul Sharif, dan kerajaan di sana bersepakat dengan para mungkin pedagang atau dari influence dari Turki ya. Ya, dan kita juga dekat dengan masjid itu rumahnya. Iya. Iya, semuanya I could say that's even beautiful than the mosque in Indonesia. I can say that it's very big mosque, and there's a lot of Muslim, friendly for Muslim people to live in Russia. Yeah, the next slide. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Dalam bahasa Rusia kita sebut sebagai perumahan. Ya, ini gambar Presiden Prabowo dan Putih. Dari beberapa tahun ke belakang, Presiden Prabowo sering datang ke Rusia, dan kita harapkan kerjasama antara Indonesia dan Rusia semakin terjalin mesra. Gitu. Kemungkinan Prabowo akan kembali lagi ke Rusia karena kita sudah tergabung dengan forum menjadi peluang kerjasama yang besar bagi Indonesia dan Rusia selanjutnya. Seperti itu. Oke, selanjutnya saya buka sesi pertanyaan untuk para audiens yang ingin bertanya tentang yang kita sudah sampaikan terkait status partnership between Russia and Indonesia, dan juga mungkin pertanyaan tentang masa program kita. Silakan. Oke, boleh. Ya, boleh ya kamu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Kalisha Barimai.
International student in FISIP ULFIANI Jakarta, and from the material we have presented that strategic partnership is often perceived differently by each country according to its historical experience and perspective, which is also related to the material I just learned back today in my class. And my question is, how do you see the differences between Indonesia and Russia in interpreting the meaning of their strategic partnership? I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the question. And it's also a very interesting question because these differences in our perception of strategic partnership, of course, can influence our real politics. And I think it mostly from the Russian side, maybe, as Russia sometimes, as you've seen, strategic partnership for Russia is very important. And it means shared political position. But we are now in the complex global situation, and Russia is one of the global actors who is playing on a very high level in international arena. And that means maybe Russia sometimes expecting from Indonesia to be more supportive of some of the initiatives. But Indonesia cannot go like that, as Indonesia is neutral country. Yeah, and that's one of the things we need to learn. And that is why it is good to find understanding. But for now, I think it's not a problem, as we already understand how Indonesian politics works, and we know how Indonesian people think about strategic partnership. And we do not expect from Russian side that Indonesia will support Russia in everything, in all of the actions. As I already worked with some other countries here, like Hungary, also one of the good partners of Russia, is country of European Union, but they cannot go beyond their possibilities. And it's very important to understand this pragmatism in international relations. When you're simply expecting from other countries to act like you, like Donald Trump, they're expecting everyone to act like Donald Trump said, without recognizing their culture, their identity, it's very bad for international relations. He's imposing tariffs and he's saying, I do not want that Indonesia trade with China. But he's not asking Indonesian people who are dependent from the trade with China. And it could be an obstacle that he does not think about this as he's American. American political culture is a culture of American football. When you have tough guys who are struggling for the ball and who is more powerful, which is more powerful in terms of international relations. But it's not like that, it shouldn't go like that. As people are not about to fight every time. We establish society and our culture we live in to survive our wild nature. And our religions, our philosophies are about how to overcome the wild part of the human nature. How to be human, not an animal. Animals are also good, they're perfect animals, they're cute, they're good, but they're animals. They live by instinct. In international relations, you cannot live simply by instinct without consensus. And it's very important in international relations to understand others. And that is why I'm saying that strategic partnership may be different expectations, but expectations should be discussed. And then when you're discussing, there are no problems. You have consensus. You know that they can do that, but they cannot do this, and that's very important. I think that's it from this perspective. Thank you so much.
Boleh selanjutnya yang di sebelah sana mungkin yang di belakang.
I'm very impressed with your country, Dr. NIKITA KUKLIN. Russia has been subjected to economic sanctions by Europe and America, pressured militarily by NATO, and your ally, Syria in Middle East, has fallen and been replaced by another regime. Yet, Russia has managed to survive and just in free diplomacy and maintain its economy. My question is, what kind of diplomatic maneuvers has Russia employed to gain political and military support from other countries and to quickly seek new partners and markets by shifting from the west to the east, such as China and non-mature countries, for the sake of its economic stability? And one more question. How is Russia positioning itself in the Islamic world, especially Gaza, Palestine? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for two questions. Yeah, they're also very important. The first one is simple. Russia is following, as I've mentioned, basic principles of the United Nations. How to gain support? You should be trusted partner. People should know that you are a trusted partner and you are doing predictable things. If you're unpredictable, if you're saying, we are friends with Indonesia, but next day, well, oppose tariffs, that's a very bad situation. When you're saying one thing and you're doing another, it's double standard. Double standard is bad for diplomacy, for its transparency, for predictability of diplomacy. Another thing is Russia is not doing anything unpredictable. Our interests are simple. There was a threat to our national interests. As you know, by their media sources, by the analytics in academia, and by the diplomats who already told about that, Ukraine got plans, for example, to join NATO. And how can we imagine NATO is on Russian borders from all on the side? Yeah, we are surrounded, NATO putting its military facilities with nuclear weapons, and Moscow will be destroyed in 1 second. It's a threat to national security. And there are many other reasons, like, for example, a ban of Russian language. You know, there was one of the problems that people in Ukraine were banned from using Russian language. And it's simple requirements by the nation state. Respect our language, respect our culture, and respect our security issues. And it's very simple in terms of United Nations basic charter, as we have sovereign states and we should respect each other. And that is why it starts from that idea. We are defending our rights by our national sovereignty. And it's not like we're imposing something. We do not want other countries to be democratic, to have great technology, to respect gender rights or something. We have a very predictable and clear message. And if these conditions are followed by other nations, it's not an ultimatum, or it's not a kind of strict requirement from the Russian part that all countries should respect all Russian interests. Of course, there can be different interests in different countries, even with America. Of course, with America we have two different positions on many things. But we should respect this existential threat. We could not place military bases on their borders or something. And that is why Russia gains support from many of the countries, as they understand that Russia is not doing something like it described in Western media. In Western media, we already compared with Hitler. We already compared with atrocities of World War II. But people who understand real politics, how it is going, and who is doing, how to say, not the right thing, as in politics there are no right things, there are different perspectives. It is right for one country, it is wrong for the other country. Yeah, but people understand who is predictable, who is doing a thing in the framework of existing rules. We're not violating the rules. We're not trying to change the international system which is profitable to other nations. And that is why I think we survived this economic blockade, these sanctions, because of their authority they have in the world, because of their values we are protecting, and we are protecting many of the values which are traditional to the world. And I'm not speaking about family values, cultural values or something, it's also very important. I'm saying about values of normal diplomacy. Diplomacy, how it should be, how it was established by Russia, Soviet Union at the time, and the United States, Britain, France, European countries. They were all parts of establishment of that system. It was system between us. Just imagine, I invite you to play chess, and I'm starting to have another moves, not like in chess, but like in other games, like in Chonglak or something like that. Yeah. You were saying it's not how you play chess, it's not by the rights of this desk, but I'm saying I invented my own rules, and by the rules I'm defeating you. And you're not agreed, as there are established rules of how you play. Play may be tough in chess, when you play chess, when you play in international relations. It may be tough, it may be tragical, it may be dangerous, but it's always about rules that should be followed. I'm always saying, like, you know, John Wick, famous blockbuster, cool guy, Keanu Reeves, yeah, and there are some rules for the people living there, and if you're entering Continental Hotel, you should follow the rules. International relations is the same. You are following the rules, yeah, and that is why you have an order. in order to be human, not to be an animal who is not knowing about. Even animals have their order. You may say that animals are not very smart. They are smart. They have their own order, own principles, but they're instinctive. We have human principles. And as for another part, that's really important when that's how Russia survived here. And would you please remind me about the second question? I'm sure. Positioning about Gaza and Palestine.
Yes. How is Russia positioning itself in the Islamic world, especially Gaza right now?
And Palestine. All right. That's also one of the issues which is very clear. From the start of the crisis, Russia is supporting Palestine and the solution of the two states. Two-state solution is Russian core position in this country. Russia is one of the participants of the Middle Eastern regulation process. It means we are participating with the United States, with European countries in the process of regulation of the situation in Palestine. I wouldn't say that we have, not to say bad relations with Israel. Our relations are neutral here, and it's because of our historical experience. You know, in Russia there are many Jewish people, and Jewish people in Russia is the same like Chinese people in Indonesia, of the same cultural value, of the same contribution, and maybe some of the problems with anti-Semitism that were in some of the parts of other historical paths. But it doesn't mean that Russia will support Palestine, and we have a balanced approach in this. And we are recognizing Palestine as a state. You know, there is an ambassador of Palestine in Moscow, and we are also helping the Palestinian cause. Many Palestinian students are graduates from our universities, and you know that Rudeya, I graduated from Rudeya University, Universitas Persahabatan Rakyat Rusia, and Mahmoud Abbas is one of the graduates of this university, our alumnus. Yeah, and another thing on this is that we should follow realistic decisions and take realistic steps in the solution of the Palestinian crisis. And do not think as well that it's about, I really like Indonesian approach in that case, as it's not about religion. Many people say, oh, it's because of Muslim people and Jewish people. You should divide Jewish people as simply a people whose faith is Judaism. Judaism is one of the first religions of Abrahamic circle, is the first religion, you know, first version of it. And they believe in Torah, one of the holy books of Islam. And some people say here, I'm asking some of the Muslim people in Russia who are maybe not very well in the disciplines of religion, and I'm saying, do you respect Bible and Torah? And they say, no, we do not respect. I say, how it is possible? Just remember Hadith of Jibril. And like the Hadith of Jibril, you should respect three books because they are all given by God. And it's another interesting thing, you know, that it's about politics. You should divide Jewish people, many good Jewish people. Many of the inventions in this room, like computers, even electricity or something, many things were invented by Jewish people, many Nobel Prize laureates. But it doesn't mean that Jewish people are fully supporting the government of Israel as a government of a nation state who is having its own policy. Many of the Jewish, you know, in America and Russia, and some they do not support Israel, they support Palestine. Because they believe that they can live in balance with Palestinian people. Palestinian people are also many times demonized in the media. They say Palestinian people are uneducated, wild, or something. That's a stereotypization. The people, and they're well educated, they have a culture, and just remember Edward Said, one of the famous American experts, writers, and academicians, who is author of Orientalism book. Just read once. Orientalism is very important for a post-colonial understanding. And Russian position is that simple. We are also seeking rights by the United Nations for the Palestinian people to have their own state, as it was mentioned in the declaration, the United Nations General Assembly Declaration, year of 1948. And that's that simple. Thank you very much.
Okay, question? Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Nikita, for the presentations, and Nantara, the newest sovereign wealth fund from Indonesia. So my question is, what Russian thoughts about Nantara? Is there any that it could be stronger, it strengthen the relationship in economic strategy between these two countries through investment or financing? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sure. The Nantara is one of the, I think, one of the best solutions for today's Indonesian economy, as it helps you to concentrate many of the funds from top Indonesian companies. You're all, you know, all Indonesian regional transnational companies participate in the Nantara. Simply, all banks, all huge companies, corporations, they are giving money to them. It's a fund of sovereign development. It's a Singaporean thing. If you think that is something, sometimes I hear critique in Indonesian society. They say, oh, it looks like Yayasan of the Sparta time or something. It's a Korean practice. Indonesian people simply took a Singaporean model and adopted it to the Nantara. And for Russian Federation, you know, at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, during the visit of Papa Prabowo to Russia, we concluded an agreement between the Nantara and the Russian Fund of Direct Investment. And Russian Direct Investment Fund is merely the same organization. It's not like sovereign fund, but this fund which is behind many of the good projects in our society and developing Russian economy. And we have now this share with Nantara, and Russia can invest into Indonesian economy, which is very important now. As you know, before that, Americans, Japanese people, Great Britain, they were interested in the Nantara fund, and they were involved in that. But it's a good idea that Russia can also participate. And that is why the Nantara is a great possibility for us to develop something, especially in the fields we are powerful from Russian side. You know, infrastructure in Russia is a very high level in terms of agriculture, medicine, and ecology, energy power, nuclear power. We can all cooperate in all the domains Russia is strong in, and that is why the Nantara is important. Thank you so much.
Okay, the last question, maybe? Okay.
Can you call me Afan? I just know little Russian, Mr. So, my question is, first I would like to ask you, considering Indonesia's active role in various international organizations, such as ASEAN, and its growing interest in BRICS, how do you see Indonesia balancing its relations with Western powers and Russia in the current multipolar global order? And then, based on your research on Indonesia's foreign policy, how consistent is Indonesia in implementing the principle of bebas aktif, conflict elective, when it comes to its relationship with Russia? Да, спасибо.
Добрый день, спасибо большое за вопрос. Your name is Giovanni, I assume it's Italian. Yeah, you're Italian. Interesting. You see, first of all, for BRICS and other things that Indonesia is joining here, it's important for Indonesia now to be a global power, as I've mentioned, to be involved in the process. That there are some processes, and if you're not participating, you're out. Other people, other nations will decide what you will do in the next 10 years, in the next 100 years. How will you develop? But it's the whole nation. Just imagine that 280 million people of Indonesia would be excluded from the national relations process without having a rightful decision. That is why Indonesia should be active, should participate in all of their formats. For BRICS forward, of course, there is interest in developing relations with not only Russia, but with China, with India, and with Africa. Indonesia is now very active in Africa. There were like 3 or 4 embassies established with African states in the last 5 years. And that is why Indonesia is trying to be a regional power, which is very strong in a regional level in Southeast examples, for example, Indonesia is one of the major producers of food in Nigeria. In Nigeria, all people eat indomie. It's popular there. In Nigerian people, they know about indomie. Different tastes, different colors. Yeah? In some of the countries of Africa, people wear batik because of this Dutch colonial thing. Yeah, but there is a production of batik by Indonesian people in Africa. And many of the examples we simply do not know about because it's not very highly broadly informed about this. Another thing on how to protect the bus active position. First of all, BRICS is not a military or a kind of political bloc. BRICS is not an alliance of anti-Western countries. BRICS is about development, and if you see its main goal is economic and technological development of the nations who participate in BRICS. Of course, it's a threat for the United States because it's against dollar, because of the policy of de-dollarization. In ASEAN, there is also a policy of de-dollarization. You have the direct transaction agreement with Malaysia. You can simply, by the QR code, transfer money from Malaysia to Indonesia in rupiah and in ringgit. No problem, national currency. You have ASEAN agreement by the ASEAN Summit agreement during the Indonesian presidency, like 2 years ago, about transaction swaps. You can also swap money between ASEAN countries in your national currency. No problem, but it's a threat for the dollar. If you're doing this, even it's 4%, 3%, it's dangerous for the dollar domination. If no one will use dollar as a national currency, it would be a fail of the United States as a global country, as an empire, which is behind international relations. In other terms, some people may criticize Indonesia for involving in relations with some of the countries that may seem dangerous for its position. Some people say from different organizations, even in Indonesia, there are some researchers who are thinking mostly in the Western way. And they say, oh, while you're cooperating with Russia, you will be under sanctions, it will be dangerous, you shouldn't do that. But Russia is one of the major players in the international arena. And Indonesia is one of the main players of regional order in Southeast Asia. How can you imagine the international process without the cooperation of these two states? It's we are big states, we need to cooperate. It's our obligation to survive between each other. And it doesn't matter what the United States think in this case. As we are sovereign states, we decide with whom we cooperate with. The bus active was educated ideology in terms of it's hard to follow. It's hard to follow, but there are some red lines. If you're establishing military bases of another country in the territory, it's a violation of the bus active. If you're joining military bloc, it's a violation of the bus active. If you're supporting, for example, China and saying nothing to China for Natura, but you're criticizing Americans, it's a violation of the bus active policy. But if you're criticizing Chinese, criticizing Americans, but establishing good relations at the same time with Europeans, with Russians, it's a active policy as you are following the current need of your country and how to behave. If you want to protect yourself, you're protecting. If you want to cooperate, you're cooperating. And that's the main thing. It would influence, I think, the relations with Russia and relations with Europe in a simple way. All countries are interested in Indonesia. And all countries think that they are really grabbed Indonesia as the main partner. French people think that Indonesia is the main ally of France, of Emmanuel Macron. They have friendship with Macron and Macron, and there was a strong military cooperation between France and Indonesia. But it's not like that. Indonesia is still neutral. It's not supporting French position in many of the aspects. Russia, they think, Russia and Indonesia are the main partners, but it's not. Indonesia is cooperating with everyone. We are great partners, we are strategic partners, but we respect Indonesian right to have partnership with the European Union. We wouldn't say that, you're with Europeans, so we are just going out of the strategic partnership with a diplomatic mistake. It's not how the things are done. And that's important. Important thing to follow and to be neutral, to be in the middle. When you're in the middle, you're out of the catastrophe. When you're at the brinks of the international order, you may fall out. You may disappear as an international actor because you're only pursuing one position, only one position. And there are many examples in history when it happened like that. Just analyze World War I, World War II, and you will see that countries who made wrong decisions, who joined wrong blocs, or tried to be extreme, tried to be radical, they disappeared. They were changed, they were transformed by international order, and they were collapsed after that. Maybe some of them are still existing, but that's another country already, with another history and experience. That is why there should be a consensus. Consensus is the main thing, and dialogue is the main thing. And I do not think that BRICS or European Union or OECD or something violating the bus active, it's still the bus active policy without any problem. Right, thank you so much for the question.
Is there any questions? Okay, so that's our last question. Thank you Nikita for your answer and for the materi yang sudah disampaikan tadi. Dan saya sebagai moderator dan juga yang tadi sudah menyampaikan terkait awal masa program, mengucapkan terima kasih kepada para audiens. Kemudian saya kembali kepada teman-teman.
Hadirin sekalian, kita telah bersama-sama mengikuti paparan dan diskusi pada hari ini. Sebagai bentuk penghargaan, program studi hubungan internasional FISIP UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta akan menyerahkan sertifikat penghargaan kepada narasumber kita, Dr. Nikita KUKLIN, dan moderator kita, FITRIA DESI ULFIANI MA. Untuk itu, kami mohon kesediaannya kepada Bapak Narasumber untuk memberikan sertifikat kepada Dr. Nikita KUKLIN dan FITRIA DESI ULFIANI. Sebelum kita menutup acara pada hari ini, mari kita bersama-sama melakukan sesi foto bersama sebagai bentuk